Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a total game changer when it comes to raising kids, and it's based on the Relational Parenting Framework. If you are just totally exhausted by the endless cycle of managing your kids' surface behavior, the constant negotiation, the correcting, those draining power struggles, and you're ready to explore the rich inner emotional world that actually drives all of that stuff, well, you're in the right place. We're going to look inward. Let's start with a question that, honestly, every parent everywhere has agonized over at some point. What is actually happening beneath your child's behavior? We've all been there, right? Parenting can be incredibly frustrating. We see the epic meltdown, the defiance, the slammed door, the absolute refusal to just put on their shoes. But those visible actions, they're often just the tip of the iceberg. What if the behavior isn't actually the problem, but just a signal? Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for this psychological ecosystem. We'll start with the behavior trap, look at 3 interconnected realities, and explore your inner roles. Then we'll navigate overwhelm responses, unpack our old stories, and finally wrap it all up by building conscious connection. All right, starting things off with Section 1, the behavior trap, looking beneath the surface. It is so incredibly common to fall into the trap of obsessing over correction and compliance. And let's be real, it's exhausting trying to constantly control actions without understanding the engine that's actually driving them. There is a stark difference here. Traditional parenting is laser-focused on fixing behavior. It relies heavily on control and compliance, constantly asking, how do I just make my child listen? Relational parenting, on the other hand, is a massive shift. It prioritizes your own awareness, your emotional regulation, and deep connection. So while the traditional method reacts to the outward action, the relational method responds to the underlying emotional need. That brings us right to Section 2, 3 interconnected realities, the ecosystem of growth. Kids don't grow in isolation, do they? They grow within an emotional atmosphere that we, the adults, create for them. It brilliantly illustrates how the parent's internal state directly shapes the relationship. And then the quality of that relationship is what slowly forms the child's inner world. You simply can't understand the parenting dynamic just by looking at the child. You really have to look at the parent first. The parent always comes first. Moving on to Section 3. Exploring your inner roles. Who is leading the moment? I want you to look inward for a quick second. When you're frantically trying to get everyone out the door in the morning, have you ever noticed different parts of your personality suddenly taking the wheel? The source material identifies 5 of these internal roles. The controller steps in to manage and direct the whole shebang. The caregiver naturally nurtures and protects. Then there's the grounded self, who is present, calm, and aware. The free spirit brings playfulness and spontaneity, and the adjuster, well, they change behavior based on fear or external pressure. Now hear this, none of these roles are inherently bad. The trouble only really starts when a reactive role, like the controller or the adjuster, takes over unconsciously when you really needed a different approach. Now, what's really interesting is the shift from automatic reactions to actively choosing connection. Identifying these roles, like actually catching yourself in the moment and thinking, oh wow, my controller is stepping in right now because I feel totally out of control, that creates the vital breathing room needed for self-awareness. You literally stop being the reaction and you start observing it. And that awareness, that's what gives you a choice. I want you to really let this profound concept sink in. Children borrow emotional stability from the adults caring for them. It's absolutely crucial. When your grounded self is the one leading the moment, you become that necessary safe harbor for them. But if you're flooded and reactive, the child simply absorbs that instability right into their own nervous system. But hey, what happens when we just can't stay grounded? That takes us to Section 4, navigating overwhelm responses, when capacity is exceeded. This framework takes such an incredibly compassionate look at what happens when the daily grind of parenting just becomes too much. Because let's face it will become too much. When we get pushed beyond our limits, our bodies typically fall into one of 5 survival responses. We might start shutting down and emotionally withdrawing. We might default to overreacting, yelling or snapping. Sometimes we fall into overfunctioning, anxiously trying to micromanage every little detail. Or maybe we just hit giving up, feeling totally hopeless. And finally, there's returning to connection. It is so important to strip away any shame or moral judgment here. Slipping into these states is not a sign that you're a bad parent. It is literally just a sign that your nervous system is overloaded. Let's break down this specific causal pathway. Throughout your day, little triggers build up. Eventually, your emotional capacity is just exceeded. Bam, that's when the automatic overwhelm response kicks in. And finally, with a bit of awareness and support, you return to connection. So losing your temper isn't some random character failure. It's a completely predictable nervous system overload. And please, take this to heart. The goal here is not perfection. A perfect track record in parenting is absolutely impossible. The real goal is just recognizing that overwhelm a little earlier, recovering a bit more gently, and fixing the relational rupture afterward. What actually builds resilience in your child is acknowledging when you lost your cool, coming back to them and saying, hey, I was overwhelmed, let's reconnect. Which beautifully leads us into Section 5, unpacking our old stories, the past and the present.
We are peeling back to the deepest layer of the onion here. Let's see how this builds chronologically. Decades ago, you had an original experience. Maybe you were told that your big emotions were just an inconvenience. Years ago, that slowly formed into a solid story. I must hide my feelings to be loved. And today? Well, today that shows up as a pattern in your parenting where you feel sudden panic or rage when your child throws a completely normal tantrum. Early emotional adaptations actually harden into the unconscious rules that we end up applying to our kids today.
It's wild to see how these unseen stories manifest. Think about it. If you carry an old belief that mistakes are dangerous because maybe you were harshly punished as a kid, you might severely overreact when your child simply spills a glass of water. You aren't actually reacting to the spilled water. Your nervous system is reacting to the old danger associated with making a mistake. So the crucial point to land on is this. You are not just responding to your child. Your old story is getting activated. This is such an empathetic, wildly empowering realization. It empowers you to separate your past emotional trauma from the perfectly normal, growing child sitting right in front of you. It's not about them. It's about the story you're carrying. And finally, Section 6, building conscious connection, choosing awareness over habit. So how do we actually shift our daily dynamics and bring all these layers together? It all comes down to active awareness. Start to notice your familiar feelings, like recognizing that you default to anger when what you're actually feeling is helpless. Observe your hidden survival rules, like that intense internal pressure to always hurry or get it right. Work to soften those old protective decisions from your past. Intentionally cultivate your grounded self. And above all else, prioritize relational repair when things inevitably go sideways. Looking through these specific parenting lenses provides the breathing room you need to consciously choose connection, rather than just slipping into an automatic survival reaction. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. The very next time you feel completely overwhelmed, right before you react, I challenge you to pause and ask yourself, what is really happening here? Which part of me is trying to lead right now? What old story is waking up? Leaving the automatic pilot behind and having the courage to ask these questions is the true key to transforming your family dynamics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this framework equips you to build much deeper, more resilient connections with your kids.